Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our first ever combined virtual and in-person annual general meeting of the Canadian Kennel Club. For those who don't know me, I'm Richard Paquette, and I'm the MC for today's AGM. I'm also a director in Zone 4. Many of you know me well. I've been here quite a bit, and another little piece of trivia, we've held our AGM here in the past. March 2002, the Canadian Kennel Club came to St. John's, Newfoundland to celebrate dogs with all of our friends here. We are meeting in beautiful St. John's, Newfoundland. While I am addressing a great group of local members here in our audience, we also are broadcasting live to members across the country. The live broadcast also allows our French-speaking members who are joining virtually to have simultaneous interpretation of the AGM. I want to introduce two stars of our AGM. First, we have the beautiful Labrador Retriever, Shine, 7 years old, and her owner, Imelda McDonald. And Kim Delaney has brought Maze, a beautiful 5.5-year-old male Newfoundland. How appropriate to have at our AGM two of Canada's Indigenous breeds of dogs. We're so proud of all the background that helped develop these breeds right here in Newfoundland, and Canada is very proud of these two breeds. I'm going to turn over the microphone to our director from Quebec, Denis Gros-Louis, to explain a little bit more about how the day will progress.
So to listen to today's meeting in French, you just click on that little icon that looks like three stacked lines in the menu bar of the live stream window and select CKC AGM live stream French. For those of you in the room who would like to listen in French, of course, you just come to see me and I'll whisper in your ear. We have here a remote, so I'll be monitoring the questions that you may have, and there will be some sections where I'll be able to answer in French and English. Richard, back to you.
I know several other speakers, including our chair, will be thanking the local group for helping us host our AGM here in St. John's, Newfoundland. Our local director is Frank MacArthur. Frank, could you stand up? Can you pan that way, young man? And stay panned over there, because next we have Pamela Skeens, our hospitality host. And I'm here to tell you, we have had the most amazing hospitality. Please stand, Pam. And her local team here with Julie Barrett on the team. Now, all the board members now are all officially Newfoundlanders because they were all screeched in last night, and we had an amazing time, you know, with the local members getting together for some fun and camaraderie, and we so much appreciate all of our local hosts. Newfoundlanders have to be the most warm, kindest people in our country. Thank you all very much. This is the first time the CKC has hosted an hybrid AGM. Our hope is that everything runs smoothly today, but please bear with us if there are any technical hiccups as we learn to navigate this new hybrid setting. We have an amazing afternoon for you today ahead of us, starting with our keynote presentation of Partners in Preservation, the role of Kennel Club breeder programs in supporting breed health and welfare. We will take a break before moving into the official proceedings of the AGM, which will include reports on your club's progress and member recognition awards. So we have an exciting day ahead of us. Corinne Walker, our Board of Directors Chair, will be conducting the official proceedings of our AGM, and she will be assisted by Denis Gros-Louis, Vice Chair of the Board of Directors of the Canadian Kennel Club. And Denis will help moderate the question periods. To kick things off, we have a very, very special guest joining us virtually from the way across the pond. The Vice Chair of the Board of the International Partnership of Dogs, Bill Lambert, is the Health, Welfare, and Breeder Services Executive of the Kennel Club in the United Kingdom. He oversees the Kennel Club's numerous health and welfare initiatives, including breed health and conservation plans, tools for breeders, and the Kennel Club supported breed rescue. In addition, Bill is the Kennel Club's chief spokesman, representing the Kennel Club in media and on international and external committees and groups, including Parliament. We are excited to welcome Bill today to talk about how the Kennel Club in the United Kingdom is supporting breeders in sustaining and improving health and well-being of purebred dogs, and how the kennel clubs can work together with their breeders to become partners in preservation. Following his presentation, there will be an opportunity for a few questions. If you are joining us remotely, you can submit your questions for Bill by using the Q&A tab on the main screen of the broadcast platform. It should be in the left-hand menu. For those of you in the room, please use the mic located in the center aisle to pose your questions at the appropriate time. And with that, I'll turn the microphone over to you, Bill, in the United Kingdom. Thank you, Bill, for doing this presentation on behalf of all the members of the Canadian Kennel Club. Take it, Bill.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. Just to acknowledge, can you hear me okay? I'm assuming that's a yes. Okay, so thank you thank you very much for inviting me to talk to you this afternoon. I've been at the Kennel Club for around about 18 years, and I have been involved in an awful lot of initiatives during that time. Just one second, my presentation doesn't, there we go. So why am I talking to you this afternoon? Well, I have been involved in an awful lot of things that are involved with the Kennel Club, particularly with health. But I'm actually a dog person. I'm an ordinary dog person. I've been breeding dogs since 1978. There's a picture of me when I had some hair, showing one of my bull terriers. I got on that journey of breeding and showing and judging. I started judging in '82, but I've always had a particular interest in health and welfare. I consider myself very privileged to be able to work for the Kennel Club, because I'm one of those that I've got a massive interest in dogs and the whole dog sport. And now I'm able to earn my living through my hobby. So I consider myself very privileged. My initial role at the Kennel Club was I was a breeder advisor, which meant I went and inspected breeders' kennels. And I've done a number of roles since that time. And as Richard said, one of my roles is I am the main KC spokesperson. So I'm one of those people that has to be quite careful what they say, because what I say accidentally can suddenly become Kennel Club policy. So forgive me if I sit on the fence from time to time. Sorry, we've gone the wrong way there. So I want to talk to you a little bit about it, and so I'm going to talk to you about some of the challenges that we have in the UK. You may recognise some of them. You may not have the same challenges, but I think you will recognise some of the things I'm going to talk about, and I think we do share challenges. I want to talk about why the Kennel Club's changed, why we're changing, where we are now, and really trying to keep on make sure that we represent dogs in the way that we should, and the way that they take the position that we should for pedigree dogs in the UK, and against the changing landscape effectively. So just a little bit of history about the Kennel Club. We were formed in 1873. That says 1973 there. We've been going a little bit longer than that, 1873, which means actually we have our 150th anniversary next year. Obviously, the Kennel Club has changed in that time. It was initially simply set up. A group of gentlemen got to set up, led by Mr. Seward Shirley, who's pictured on the right-hand side there. There was a group of gentlemen who just got it set out to regulate dog shows. Before they did that, there were dog shows in existence, but there were no regulations at all. They were subject to lots of arguments, and it was a lot of confusion because there was no register as such, and anybody could turn up and call their dog Billy, and you could have several Billies at the same dog show. So there was a need for regulation, and that was simply why the Kennel Club was formed. It's always been a members club, and it did actually set up a stud book fairly early on, and then it started to register dogs. I must learn to go the right way. Okay, so where are we? Things have changed. We are in a very different world now. And we have a number of functions now at the Kennel Club in the UK. We are a governing body. We regulate all dog activities, obviously all dog shows, including Crufts, of course, which is the world's premier dog show, I would suggest. It is a members club. It has premises in London, and I would suggest to you, if any of you ever come to England and have a friend who's a member of the Kennel Club, then persuade them to take you to the building in Clarges Street in London, because they can give you a lovely lunch there. So do make sure you make use of it. We are a business, we're a non-for-profit business, and we have a charity. So what we actually try and do, all the money that we earn through registrations, and that is our largest income, registrations, we actually put back into dogs in one way or another. We are a registration body, and we've had a record year last year. In 2021, we registered 350,000 new dogs. There are around about 14 million or 13 million dogs in the UK at the moment, and we recognise that the Kennel Club registers probably somewhere around about 30% of those dogs. We have a number of registers. We have a breed register. We have an activity register for the activity dogs, but we also run the UK's largest microchipping database. Registration, people often say to me, why should I register my dog? There are enormous benefits in registration. There are welfare benefits, but what it really does, registration of puppies actually adds transparency, and all our information is available online. You can see records of dogs online. You can see records of pedigrees, etc. So it really does actually add transparency to the whole supply chain of supplying puppies to the market. And of course, what it also does, having that provenance, having a pedigree behind your dog, actually does lead to some value in the actual dog itself. However, what we have recognized these days, there are lots of expectations from what we should be doing, and canine health and welfare must absolutely be at the front and center of all of what we do, but it must be seen to be so. I will start to go the right way. So why dog breeding has changed? The Kennel Club's changed, but dog breeding has changed. I think it's fair to say that dog breeding was always a commercial operation, and there was no shame attached to that. And I would suggest today there shouldn't be any shame attached to being a commercial breeder. However, we know that there's enormous challenges in presenting that, and there does seem to be some reputational damage attached to some breeders who are commercial breeders. And unfortunately, those few breeders do bring dog breeding into disrepute. But there is actually nothing wrong with breeding dogs and making money from dogs if you can do it. But of course, it does bring with it additional challenges. What used to happen, certainly even when I started showing dogs in around about 1978, there were lots of large kennels around, and those kennels had varying welfare standards, but it was actually very common for breeders to have 30, 40, 50, 60 dogs. Those breeders had immense knowledge and experience, and of course they did have access to cheap labor, because the kennel staff, it was quite easy to get kennel staff in those days. Those large kennels have largely disappeared in the UK, and there are there are some pluses to that, there are some minuses, but certainly some of that experience has gone. It is now what we call a cottage industry. It's our typical breeders now will have 2 or 3 dogs rather than 30 or 40. I think it's fair to say it's no longer considered a profession. Most of the breeders that we register dogs from are what we call hobby breeders, and actually 70% of our registrations are from breeders who register 1 litter or less per annum. The other thing is that society's expectations of dog breeding have actually changed, and I know that certainly fairly shortly after I started breeding dogs, I would always have to apologize for being a dog breeder, because people's expectations or people's perceptions about dog breeding was that dog breeding wasn't necessarily a healthy activity. I would actually completely disagree with that. It's a really healthy activity, and dog breeders, good dog breeders, do something wonderful. They bring an awful lot of pleasure and joy to people's lives. The number of people I've spoken to, they say that the puppy they've bought from me has really has changed their life for the better. And there's lots of, I'm not unusual, there's lots of breeders doing the same as what I'm doing. Of course, what has happened now, health testing, which is a commonplace for dog breeders these days, we have so much more information that dog breeding is actually much more complex, and that brings with it initial challenges. Dog breeding is much more difficult these days, but I also think it's a very exciting time because we have access to lots of tools that actually can help dog breeders make good breeding decisions and help them breed healthy puppies. Dog shows have changed. The history of dog shows is quite an interesting one, and actually in the UK, what actually changed life for a lot of people was the Factories Act in 1850. Until that time, it was quite normal for people to work 7 days a week, 18, 19, 20 hours a day. And it was only after 1850 that the Factories Act came in, and it meant that people had actual time off. Initially, it started with people having Sundays off, and of course that extended over the years. And it was only then that hobbies started. Until then, hobbies were something that only the rich and well-heeled could actually had the time and money to do. Of course, we've also seen a improved transport network, and it may seem it's rather strange for me to talk to you about traveling long distances, because in the course of your daily activities, you travel far more distances than we do, and certainly to go to dog shows. England's only 800 miles long from one end to the other, so it's much easier for us to get around. But until we had a good transport network, then it wasn't easy to get to dog shows. It is now, dog shows is open to everybody these days, but it's no longer what we call a stockman's competition. Traditionally, dog shows were the opportunity for breeders to show the very best that they had, and it was very much the breeding, the pedigrees were very much influenced by what happened in the show ring. That link has now been broken, and I think that dog shows nowadays, a lot of the people who show dogs in the UK they're not necessarily breeders, and the dogs that they show aren't necessarily going to be breeding animals. And to just give you some indication of how that has, or a breed that's actually really illustrated very well by, is the French Bulldogs. In 2016, we registered 21,000 French Bulldogs. 164 puppies were by champion stud dogs. 6,000 plus dogs were by definitely dogs that weren't show dogs. These were dogs that, and I know they're not show dogs simply because they are colours, what we call non-breed standard colours. And we only looked at the top 50 dogs as producers, and they produce between them 6,000 dogs. So the show ring has far less of an influence these days on pedigrees. What has also changed is people's attitudes. Attitudes to health and welfare have changed. As I said earlier, we have much more knowledge now, so breeding is much more complex. In the UK, we have a number of health schemes. We have a hip and elbow scheme, which we started around about 65 years ago, along with the BVA. We have an eye scheme as well, running alongside that. We also have a CMSM scheme for Cavaliers that we started with the BVA a number of years ago. More recently, we've started a respiratory function grading scheme for the brachycephalic breeds, and I'm sure you know the attention that everybody is showing to brachycephalic breeds these days, largely because of the growth of those dogs. We've also recently started a heart scheme for Cavaliers, and we've also started a spinal scheme for Dachshunds. Of course, what's really been a game changer is DNA testing. It seems hardly a week goes past when a new DNA test doesn't come along. And of course, breeders love DNA tests because they give us a really good result. And it means that we can actually use any dog in our breeding program quite safely as long as we act on those results. The other thing is that we are all being looked at these days. I think that dog breeders are under great scrutiny, and I think it's something that we, and certainly in the UK, are aware of. And talking of scrutiny, as if we need any reminder, we had a television program shown in the UK called Pedigree Dogs Exposed in November 2009. It wasn't the first film that actually, it wasn't the first time that attention was drawn to the issues with dog breeding and dog health, but it probably was the first time that we'd had such attention to link or to show a link between dog shows and health. I have to say it was a very unfair and unbalanced program. There were complaints made to our broadcasting commission, which were upheld. But the fact is that the film actually resonated with the public. It was shown on prime time BBC television, and it did have an effect, which did mean that we had to take some action. We did respond, and we responded in a number of ways. But the thing I think I have to say, we were already doing a lot of activities in terms of to improve canine health and welfare. And this gave us the opportunity to really make sure that we pushed those messages home, because it was really important that we engaged with breeders and made sure that breeders realised how the world was seeing them. The first thing we did commission an independent inquiry into dog breeding. That inquiry came from with a number of recommendations, and the vast majority of those recommendations we did implement. We did review our show regulations and breed standards. We did actually also ban close matings. And when I say close matings, the matings we banned was father to son, mother to daughter, mother to son, and sibling matings. Quite frankly, there weren't a lot of people doing those close matings at that time. So it was a fairly straightforward decision. But there was such a furore about close line breeding or close inbreeding that we felt we did have to take some action. We also set up a dog health group that actually reports into our main board. We introduced vet checks that shows for what we call our high profile breeds. Those high profile breeds are the breeds that we know have some sort of health implications. The idea of the vet checks was simply to make sure that those dogs, before they go into the best of breed ring, were actually seen by a vet to make sure they had no visible signs of health implications, or had any health implications that could actually affect the dogs. We also, as I say, we really tried to make a big effort to show people what we were doing. We knew what we were doing. We knew we were doing all the right things. But we clearly weren't getting those messages out there. We produced a short film called Pedigree Dogs: A Healthy Future to show what the benefits were to having pedigree dogs, having healthy pedigree dogs, and also showing how the show ring could positively influence. And that's one of the things that did come out of the independent review. Sir Patrick Bateson said that show rings could be a positive lever for change. And that was one of the things that we really tried to focus on. Of course, we already had our health schemes in place, but there was no mandatory, there was no need for people to actually make use of those schemes. They were there, they were voluntary, and people could use them. And we talked a lot about responsible breeding, about how, whereas the film Pedigree Dogs Exposed showed a lot of bad breeding practices that clearly were out there, we had to show that actually that not all dog breeders are like that. In fact, that was a very small minority, but we did need to show what good looks like. And thankfully, in place, we did have our assured breeder scheme in place at that time, and this gave us the opportunity to really push that scheme, to really direct people to it, to show that there was a real source of good breeders there that they could actually be pointed and directed to. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the assured breeder scheme. As I say, it was going a lot longer than going many years before Pedigree Dogs Exposed came along. In fact, it was 1999 we first had the concept, and we launched it in 2004. The reason that we did it, one of the main reasons, was that people had changed their buying habits. The way that they started to buy puppies, their first port of call was the internet. The Kennel Club ran a find a puppy service, a puppy list basically, and directing people to breeders who had puppies. And these were anybody who registered with the Kennel Club could use that find a puppy service. But of course, although we put lots of disclaimers on our website, we couldn't take responsibility for those breeders. It did bring with it some responsibility. We recognized that by putting puppies out on our website, there was an expectation from the public that these puppies were perhaps bred to a certain standard, which actually that wasn't necessarily the case. So we started our assured breeder scheme, and this was the first time that we actually started to register breeders. Until that point, all our registrations about registering dogs. And of course, we're an open register. We will register dogs from anybody, with a few exceptions, but providing they're breeding from dogs that have Kennel Club papers, Kennel Club pedigrees, we will register those dogs. So the vision was to set, we all talked about what responsible breeding was, and I'm sure you in that room there will have your own ideas of what responsible breeding is, but you'll often have slightly differing ideas of what responsible breeding is. And there's lots of breeders out there who breed in many, many different ways. It's all about achieving the right outcome. And those outcomes have to be in terms of good welfare for the dogs, but also making every effort to make sure those puppies are healthy. So the idea was to set standards for breeders, identify those who meet those standards. And that meant that we can actually give one very simple message to the public: go to an assured breeder. When you start to talk to the public, who are involved in the world of dogs, it's very easy for us to identify good and bad breeders, but actually for the puppy buying public, pointing them to a responsible breeder is very important, because those messages about what makes a responsible breeder can sometimes be very confusing for those who've never had a dog before and are buying a puppy for the first time. So it was a way to get the very simple message out there. All that good practice was wrapped up in one scheme, so we were able to say to people, go to an assured breeder. So to get there, how did we actually get the scheme on the road? We actually came up with a standard, of course, and we actually identified what was considered good practice. And there was no great surprise, but we did make sure that we went to breed clubs and consulted with those. There are some things that vary from breed to breed. What is common practice in one breed and good practice in one breed doesn't necessarily translate across breed. We had lots of inputs from breeders. Of course, what did take a major part in the assured breeder scheme was mandatory health testing. We have a whole range of health tests that breeders are obliged to do if they want to remain an assured breeder. Of course, they vary from breed to breed. The one great thing about having a database is that we know exactly what conditions and what diseases breeds have a predisposition to. So that's another great advantage for having a very robust register. And to actually come up with the health screen, we also talked to vets, and we had lots of input from the breed club. So we wanted to make sure we were doing it on the right footing. It was launched in 2004. We called it the accredited breeder scheme back then. It was largely a code of good practice, but it did include the right for us to inspect breeders. We didn't do it. We didn't inspect breeders as a matter of course. We would only, in the early days, inspect breeders where we had some concerns. There were literally about 10 points that actually breeders had to adopt. It was very cheap. It was £15 to join, and we only charged £10 a year. So it was quite cheap, and we had lots of interest. We had 350 members in our first year, and it was all run by one dedicated member of staff. If I look just through a few of the milestones, we launched it in 2004, as I said. By 2005, health tests had to be in place. So once an assured breeder went to register their litter, if those health tests weren't in place, we'd have to go back to the breeder and say, look, we can't register your dog. You need to get these health tests in place. And sometimes it was just a case that they'd have to run off and do a quick health test. But other times it meant that they couldn't comply with their rules and they could no longer remain in the scheme. We carried out our first inspection in 2006, and by 2007 we had our 2000th member. In 2012, we recognised we wanted to encourage good breeding practice, and we started giving discounts to assured breeders on registration fees. We felt that was the right thing to do. In 2013, we achieved UCAS accreditation. Now, UCAS is the United Kingdom Accreditation Service. They're the only accreditation service recognised by government. And the reason that we did that was that we were getting a lot of criticism from the welfare organisations that said, they said that the short breeder scheme was just smoke and mirrors, and it was just breeders certifying other breeders. So to counter that, we went out and we got the highest accreditation we possibly could, and we actually achieved that in 2013. Now, I have to say, that wasn't necessarily the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do at the time, but it did bring with it did make the scheme far more complex, and it did make the scheme far more robust. We know that the scheme absolutely does work. We have lots of evidence to prove how well the scheme does work. But I would say that it brought with it an awful lot of red tape and regulation that we have to follow ourselves. And one part of that was it did mean that every single member of the scheme had to be inspected. So now every member from 2014, every single member, every single person who applies to join the assured breeder scheme has to be inspected by one of our assessors before they are accepted onto the scheme. By 2016, every member had been inspected, and in 2018, the scheme got recognition in our national licensing system. If you breed more than 3 litters a year in the UK, you have to be licensed. In fact, the licensing regime has become even tougher than that, and a lot of our local authorities are actually requiring breeders any breeder who breeds 1 litter a year, but that's a whole nother subject which I won't go into now. So where are we now? Well, we are recognised as the only bona fide breeding scheme in the UK. All members are contracted to adopt the standard. The standard now is about 6 pages long. It's no longer just no longer just those 10 points. It also has some guidance attached to it. It looks a little bit daunting when you first look at it, but actually it is quite simple. And any breeder who is breeding in the right way usually finds that they can actually join the scheme because there's no great major hurdles there. Of course, what it does do, it gives great assurance to puppy buyers, because puppy buyers know that if once they're going to a breeder, they haven't got to ask themselves that, they haven't got to look at the breeder and say, oh, is this good practice? Is this not good practice? They get that assurance. Every breeder is inspected by us before they actually join the scheme. They are inspected again at least every 3 years. Every single litter is checked for compliance with the scheme rules before their registrations are accepted. And we can guarantee that all those health testing requirements are fulfilled. It does cost a little bit more now, cost £25 a year, £25 to join. And that joining fee is actually non-refundable. So if somebody pays that £25 and they don't meet the scheme requirements, and they can't make the scheme requirements, then we don't refund it, because we have a lot of work we have to do to get them to that stage. Once they're a member, the membership is £60 per annum. We have around about 3,500 members now, and we have quite a big team now running the scheme. But most of that is to do with the inspection regime, and we have 8 part-time assessors that actually go out and inspect people. There's just a repeating what the fees are. We run our membership over a 3-year, and the £60. Why we've come up with £60 is simply that the inspection, it costs us around about £180 over 3 years to actually carry out the inspection and maintain their membership. Obviously, every member must have been visited. We do publicise our assured breeders on the Kennel Club website. We also promote them at every opportunity. They're on our website, they're in social media, and every time we talk to the press and media, and whenever we're talking about pedigree dogs, and we're asked advice on breeders, we always point people to the assured breeders. And of course, social media plays a big part of that these days. Our lives are hugely dominated by social media, and that's one of the ways we get our messages out there now. So that's really what we've done. And the important thing is we really had to work with and make sure we understand our community. We have started to take responsibility for those breeders. Obviously, as I said, the Kennel Club registration system is open to everybody, but of course we can now point to breeders and say, if you want to buy a puppy, these are the people you need to go to. That doesn't mean to say they're the only good breeders we have who register with the Kennel Club, but we can actually put our hand on our heart and say these breeders are acting in the right way. And what it has done, certainly for me and for the Kennel Club, it has restored a little bit of pride. There's, as I said earlier, dog breeding, the reputation of dog breeding, I think, has gone through a very bad time, and we should not be ashamed of being a dog breeder. It's something we should be very proud of. I'm proud to be a dog breeder. I know I've brought a lot of pleasure to people over the years, and lots of people are the same. I'm not unique by any stretch of the imagination. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm more than happy to take any questions on that or any other aspect of what we're doing at the moment, if anybody has any questions for me.
Our members, and the first one is, what's involved in vet checks at dog shows? Because there you go.
Yeah, sure. The vet checks were quite controversial when we first introduced them. I think the first thing you have to remember is that we have a rather unique situation in the UK, in that Crufts Dog Show is televised. And after the film Pedigree Dogs Exposed came out, the BBC refused to show Crufts after that. So we had a lot of work to do to restore that position. And the Crufts is back on the TV now. It's on Channel 4, and it has a growing audience. Each year, the audience gets bigger and bigger. But one of the things that we did introduce was the vet checks. And this was, we know that the vast majority of dogs that go to dog shows are healthy, but there were some dogs that were still slipping through that clearly had health implications. And all the vet check is doing, the vet check is, obviously the person who's doing it is a qualified vet. They are just checking the visible health of the dog to make sure that the dog doesn't have any, and take the brachycephalic breeds, for example, make sure the dog doesn't have any breathing difficulties. And it's really to make sure that they fit our standard. And when we changed our breed standards, we have an overlying paragraph at the front of all our breed standards that basically say that all the dogs should be sound, and they should be able to breathe, act normally, basically. They should be sound, they should be able to walk and act completely normally, which is not too much to ask. It was controversial when we first introduced it, but I think if any of you are aware what's happening in Germany at the moment, I think the action that we took then has put us in a very strong place. And I have to say, the vast majority, the number of failures we get at dog shows these days are minuscule. I think we had 3 failures last year. So breeders are really paying attention, and any dog they've got any question out, they won't take to a dog show now.
Thank you very much, Bill, for your insights, for sharing actually your experiences with us. It's very helpful that and for what we do and how we could work with the breed clubs. And I also would like to invite our members here present in the room to the mic if you have a question. And I'd like to thank Lisa, because she has many questions for you. So we're going to keep you busy for at least 2 or 3 hours. So thank you. So I remember here in presence, so I will alternate between in presence and the virtual questions that I see on my screen. So Monsieur Richard Paquette.
Yes, Richard Paquette. And Bill, the Canadian Kennel Club 2 is embarking on a breeder certification scheme. As one of the early adopters of this scheme, some of the resistance we had was with the member inspections. The majority of our members are, hobby breeders and have, 1 or 2 or 3 dogs, and their kennel is their home. what advice would you give us, the Canadian Kennel Club, when we develop our inspection scheme such that, we do approve a lot of people that just have 2 or 3 dogs in their home?
You know what, Richard, I completely understand that concern from people. And it was a big step for the Kennel Club, because this was the first time the Kennel Club had ever gone into people's homes. And as you rightly say, the vast majority, you saw from the figures I gave, the vast majority of people are breeding from their own homes. It's actually far rarer for people to have even kennels these days. So if I'm completely honest, I don't think that inspection is a vital part of the scheme. I think that the ability to inspect, I think that having the right to inspect should be there, because we all, I'm sure your members are aware of the reputation damage that can actually be done by 1 or 2 rogue breeders. They get all the press attention, and the bad practice that actually is adopted, none of us would endorse that. So we want to make sure we're protected from that. And as I say, we decided it was because of UCAS accreditation that we actually went that route of inspecting every member. But I don't think it's absolutely essential. The reason we did it was largely because we had a lot of attention from the animal welfare charities in the UK, and we wanted to make sure that we could absolutely put our hand on our heart and say we've done everything possible to make sure that our scheme is a robust and bona fide scheme. But I do understand the concern of people, because being inspected, even myself, I'm an assured breeder, I get inspected, but these are very much a light touch inspection. We're not there to judge people. We are there just to make sure the dogs are happy and healthy, and that everything that the breeders are keeping reasonable records. And by reasonable records, I'm only saying, keep a record of when your dogs were inoculated, when they were in season, all this sort of thing. And often records can be kept on a calendar. So it's nothing onerous about being inspected. But I do understand the concerns, and it's something that we thought about long and hard. And I don't necessarily think that the inspection has made the scheme better, but it has actually made the scheme more defensible from those who seek to attack us. So, but I would say, as I say, it's a very light touch inspection, and all the inspectors are people who are experienced themselves in breeding. So it's really like having one of your dog friends coming around to talk to you. And I often say to people, it's a little bit perhaps like having the mother-in-law come and inspect your house. You might run a Hoover round, but you're not certainly going to build new premises for the dogs, or new accommodation for the dogs.
Thank you very much. For those who are joining us remotely, you can submit your questions by using the feature on the main portal. It's called Ask a Question, and it's on your main screen of the broadcast platform. It is on my left on my screen, so I guess it is as well for you. So let's go to question number 2 from Lisa. And the question is, what percentage of breeders on the Find a Puppy service are assured breeders? And have you had any complaints from public? And if so, how are these handled?
Okay, yeah, very good question. So the number of the number of assured breeders who are using the Find a Puppy service, it varies. It varies somewhere between 5 and 15%. And it obviously depends on, I can tell you that I don't know if I think you've experienced the same problem or the same huge demand for puppies over the last year that we've experienced. And the odd thing about that is that when there's a huge demand for puppies, then people don't need to advertise them. So our Find a Puppy service has been quite quiet over the last year. Interestingly, it's picking up again now, and we think that that is reflecting the demand. We think the demand for puppies has actually started to go off now. So so it varies between 5% and 15%. Sorry, there was a second part to that question that I didn't make a note of. I apologize.
We have a question from the floor. Tempest.
education to the public does the Kennel Club do in order to encourage people to actually go to these these assured breeder programs? Because that's always a challenge as to how we advertise that. Thank you.
You're absolutely right. That is a challenge, and it's demand. When I've seen the most interest in the assured breeder scheme when you get puppy demand. So if people are asking, and I had a lot of people in the early days of the scheme. I had a lot of breeders say to me, "Well, I've got no need to be an assured breeder, but I'm joining your scheme because I'm fed up with people asking me if I'm an assured breeder." And personally, I think that's a very positive thing, because we always promote, our message to the public is always, do your research before you buy a puppy. And that research extends from obviously choosing what breed is right for you, but also who the breeder is. But all our messaging, so in terms of what we are doing, all the messaging on our website, and we've just had a review of it just very recently. So it's almost impossible to look at our website without getting directed to the assured breeder scheme at one point. And all our messaging, whenever we go do any media work, all our messaging, whenever we do any press releases, we always use that opportunity to promote the assured breeder scheme. Now, that a lot of people a lot of the good breeders who registered with us and are not members of the scheme, they get a little bit annoyed by that, because we are always pointing to assured breeders. And of course, there are lots of breeders who are just as good as our assured breeders sitting outside the scheme. But my answer to them is always, look, if you want to get that promotion, then join the scheme, and come on the inside and be one of those in the tent rather than one of those out of the tent. But basically, in answer to your question is all our messaging, whenever we talk about buying puppies, it's always at the forefront is go to an assured breeder.
Yeah, and the follow-up to that question, Bill, is how do we get our breeders to, well, you say you only have 10 or 15% of your breeders that are part of your assured breeder scheme. And how do we, as directors and the movers and shakers in the Canadian Kennel Club, try and convince these people that this is a great thing for public and for everybody to make us more prominent in the dog show world as good breeders? And yeah.
So I'll tell you what some of the things that we have done that we found successful. One of the things that in the UK we have a huge, as I say, with the bad breeders do get us all a bad name. We call them puppy farmers, or I think the American term is puppy millers. And no one wants to be associated with those puppy farmers and puppy millers. So one of our messages has always been that this is the best way that you can actually stamp out the puppy farmers, because if you all get behind the scheme, and it's going to sound a little bit crass, but I've often used to say in the early days, don't ask what the scheme can do for you. Ask what you can do for the scheme, because it's important that we all start to sing the same hymn sheet. I think if I'm honest, it's actually quite easy. The best breeders that we have, or the most success we have, I should say, is with new breeders. When you get people who start to breed, they're having their first litter, they want to do things the right way, and it's very easy to get those people into good habits. It's quite difficult to change people's habits if they've got into bad habits, or they've always done things a certain way and it's wrong. Then it's quite difficult to get those people to change. But one of the things that we did do, I didn't mention it on our time, there's lots of little idiosyncrasies to the scheme. One of the things that we did in the early days, the good experienced breeders that we knew, we have what we call the accolade of excellence. And the accolade of excellence is actually, it's for breeders who have bred it's open to breeders who have bred 5 champions. They have to be nominated by a breed club, but the qualifiers if they've bred 5 champions, which is quite tricky in the UK. It's not so difficult in other countries. However, once those breeders had the accolade of excellence, we would actually give them free membership for a period of 5 years. Now, the reason we did that was to encourage the really good experienced breeders to be members of the scheme, And then they could actually demonstrate and lead the way for other breeders to follow. So it was a good way to actually get those experienced breeders into the scheme, and then the other breeders could actually aspire to be those breeders. I'll just talk a little bit about aspiring, because I talked to the ex-chairman of the American Kennel Club, Ron Mennick, who sadly died now, and he talked. They have a scheme in the UK. They came under an awful lot of criticism a number of years ago, and you're probably aware that a lot of breeders left the AKC. And Ron said to me that the mistake that they made in the US was that they made the assumption that all breeders were adopting good practice. And when they brought a few regulations in, it actually meant that people started to move away from the American Kennel Club. They went from a position where they were registering 1.5 million to less than 500,000 dogs in the US. And Ron said to me, the mistake we made, we should have set up a cohort of good breeders within our system and get people to aspire. And that's what we tried to do in the UK, is get people to aspire to be one of those good breeders. And so one of the ways we did that was that we gave free membership to those breeders, the experienced breeders who had a good reputation, that the breed clubs knew, and they actually helped us lead the way and get other people into the scheme.
Thank you. We have two more questions. So Lisa is asking, can a breeder participate in the scheme if they breed non-standard colors?
You've really got me some difficult questions, haven't you? Yes, and the fact that you're asking that question suggests that non-standard colours are just as controversial and a hot topic in Canada as they are in the UK. So let me answer the question first of all. Yes, we do. And the reason that we do is because the scheme is about high welfare standards. And we have to accept that there are breeders out there. There are people who want non-breed standard colour dogs. We will register them. And it seemed right to us that if there is a demand, then we should at least be in a position to point those people, those puppy inquiries, those puppy buyers, to those breeders who were at least health testing. So if they're a member of our scheme, even if they were breeding colours, non-standard colours, they were at least doing the health testing. So we could actually, we had to accept there's a demand for these dogs. It'd be wrong not to help people to find at least a good breeder of those dogs, that, you know, and direct them in that way. Now, I have to say, it is a controversial topic. We actually have a working party at the moment working on non-breed standard colours across the Kennel Club, because it's a wider issue than just our assured breeder scheme. It's affecting lots of breeders. It's something that is really challenging. And I have to say, I'm on that working party, and I know some of the challenges, because the non-breed standard colours issue is actually different for different breeds, and it looks like we're going to have to find solutions. We're not going to find a one-size-fits-all solution. I would suggest that non-breed standard colours is a topic that we probably could take all afternoon to discuss, and probably not the time to do that now.
Yes, it is a topic of interest in Canada as well. So we have a question now from Jennifer. Banning the breeding of mother to son or father to daughter is great, but that does not take into consideration that many breeds have significant amounts of their population that are genetically related as siblings, regardless of what a pedigree says. Alleles fall where they fall. Has this been recognized, and is it in the Kennel Club planning to use modern tools at our disposal?
Yeah, yes, it absolutely is. It is. We already have a coefficient of inbreeding tool on our website. It's available for anybody to use. You can look at the coefficients of individual dogs. You can look at you can do test breedings effectively. You can put two dogs in and see what the inbreeding coefficient of the puppies would be. It's a really interesting topic, because the issue with the problem with COIs is it gives a number, and we get lots of inquiries from people saying, "Oh, I'm considering a puppy, but it's got a COI of 16%. am I better off buying a puppy that's got a inbreeding coefficient of 10%? Of course, the answer to that is there's far more than just a number. You should look at the health test results, look at the pedigrees, look at the parents, look at lots of other factors. So inbreeding coefficients are fine. Of course, people should pay attention to them. We do have, within our assured breeder scheme, we do have a rule that's quite vague, but it does say that people should at least understand inbreeding coefficients and should pay attention to them. But we don't put limits on, and the reason for that is quite simple. I know other countries, some countries have done this, particularly with commonly used sires. But I think our position is that it would be wrong. That someone may have a superbly healthy dog, a fantastic dog that's really good. It's very healthy, it has a fantastic temperament. It's a wonderful example of the breed. And I think it would be wrong for us to say, but you put a limit on how many times that dog was used. But no, you are absolutely right that inbreeding coefficients are probably one of our biggest challenge. And you, in the introduction, Richard mentioned breed health and conservation plans, which is something we are doing for every breed. And I would say that inbreeding coefficients is the one. Oh, sorry, I dropped my machine there. Is the one thing that we get a lot of resistance from breeders. And I think there's a big education piece that needs to happen. People really need to understand the implications of creating genetic bottlenecks.
I have two questions, but we're going to go to the floor.
Okay. Thank you. I changed your.
You said that in response, at least partially in response to Pedigree's Dogs Exposed, the Kennel Club had made a video on dog health. I wanted to know if you thought that was a worthwhile exercise in getting your message out. And I mean, you obviously don't have the audience of a BBC or even a Channel 4 for that matter. I'm concerned that we spend a lot of time talking to ourselves and not getting the message out to the general public. And how are you approaching that? And did this video you made, which I haven't seen, do any good?
Well, that's a really good question. First of all, was it worth it? That was your first question. It was worth it because it made us feel a lot better. Pedigree Dogs Exposed, it brought us an awful lot of bad publicity, and if we hadn't been doing some of the things that we were doing, the Kennel Club would have been in a very dark place. But we were already doing lots of initiatives. We had a lot to be proud of. So we did have to basically point people to what we were doing. And the Assured Breeding Scheme was a very big, important part of that. And I've often said that had we not had that scheme, receiving that level of attack, not being able to say this is what good looks like, we would have been in a very difficult place. But certainly in terms of the film, it made us feel a bit better because we were able to put some of our thoughts and ideas into a film that we made available. But you're absolutely right. And the depressing thing for us about Pedigree Dogs Exposed is that when we were originally approached about the film, the producer, Jemima Harrison, was in retrospect quite disingenuous because we felt she was keen to promote to us that it was going to be a very positive film about pedigree dog health. Now, we'd had coverage from Crufts for many years, and we'd always been encouraging the BBC to actually share some of the initiatives, some of the things that we were already doing in terms of dog health. But of course, good news doesn't actually sell TV programs. And of course, a very bad program, something that's giving you lots of bad news with lots of bad imagery, made a very popular program. So you're right, we did not have the audience, and we haven't got the budget, quite frankly. We're compared with other kennel clubs, we're reasonably well off, but we are a tenth of the size of the RSPCA or the Dogs Trust in the UK. And these were the organisations that were attacking us at the time. So in answer to your question, did it do any good? Well, it made us feel better. Did it have a real impact? I think the answer is probably no. We did make it available to people. We had it on DVD. We had it available on our website. But actually, it was a moment in time, quite frankly. And what we've done, what we found the best approach has been over the years is actually to really drip feed all our messages. We have done an awful lot since that TV program, but most of it was actually work that we'd already started. We were already, and we just had to make sure people were aware. But in terms of the film itself, if I'm honest, it didn't have a massive effect.
I lost the question I wanted to ask. Okay, I'll go to my last one. Health testing requirements for ABS are customized to each breed. If so, how are testing requirements determined? Did the Kennel Club work with your vet association to do this? Were breed clubs involved in this process?
So yeah, that's actually a good question, because things have actually changed and they're continually changing. So initially, when we first introduced the health test for specific breeds, we worked very closely with the breed clubs, and it was the tests that we were doing were what most breeders were doing anyway, or most good breeds were doing anyway. We now have a validation process, because their clinical schemes. We only have a few clinical schemes, and I listed those at the beginning of the presentation. But of course, what is happening is DNA tests. We are seeing a vast array. It seems hardly a week goes past where a new DNA test doesn't arrive. The unfortunate thing about DNA tests is that they're not all the same. They're not all valid. We make sure that we have a validation process before we validate those tests. So it's a three-stage process. First of all, the test has got to be supported by a scientific paper. And the unfortunate thing is commercial laboratories now are releasing tests before they have a paper to actually support it. And we find that very difficult, because often breeders can be making use of that test before there's the science is proven effectively. And that does cause problems, because in some instances we're not able to record those results. We're saying, look, you can do the test, but we're not going to say don't do it. But we're certainly not making it mandatory, because we don't know the effect that test will have. And I can use an example of the DM test for French Bulldogs. DM is a condition that exists in the breed, but actually there's never been a recorded case of a dog affected by it. So you can have a DNA test for it, and yet the dog can be apparently affected, but it will never suffer from the condition. So we are much more careful these days. In the early days, we were very much guided by the breed clubs. We do work with the breed clubs now, and often it's the breed club will come to us and they'll say, look, there's this DNA test for a new condition. Will you start to record the results on the website? And we have to make sure that test is properly valid. So it goes through our validation process. And as I say, our process does include, it includes, is it supported by a scientific paper? And also we look at other things like which is the laboratory that has actually authorized this test, because as I said, not all DNA tests are the same. And, it's possible to run a DNA testing laboratory out of your kitchen that won't have the same validation process in place that Cornell University will, for example. So it's something that we do. We have a validation process that we go through that includes a number of things. For instance, like the scientific paper and how good is the science. We want to make sure that we are using good science and not necessarily science that's not proven.
Thank you very much. We had questions about standard colors and non-standard colors, so we'll actually send the questions to you, and we'll do a bit of a reply for the two members that submitted questions. So on behalf of the Canadian Kennel Club and our members here present and virtually present, thank you again, Bill. This presentation was wonderful. It's been very helpful, actually. Thank you all for your work on behalf of the Kennel Club breeders and your dedication to purebred dogs.
As Richard mentioned, I am Corinne Walker. I have the honor of representing members in Zone 8, Manitoba, and I am the chair of the board of directors. Joining me at the head table today are your board of directors, our executive director, our honorary chair for 2021, And I will now ask the head table to introduce themselves, starting with Zone 1 on my far right.
Hi, I'm Frank MacArthur. I represent Zone 1, which is the host for this AGM. And I'd like to welcome all my members from Newfoundland and the hospitality that they have already given us, and also my members in Nova Scotia who will be watching virtually that couldn't make it over here. I would like to thank St. John's for putting on such a great AGM, and that we as a board, and from what I've heard of everybody, totally enjoyed. So welcome, and hope you will stay for the end when we have our wine and cheese and a few little gifts. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Paul Oslodge. I represent Zone 2, which is New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island. I would like to welcome my members from that zone, that zone and the two provinces that are joining us virtually today. And once again, I would like to thank the hospitality here in St. John's as well for hosting the meeting. Thank you.
And I'm Richard Paquette, the director from Ontario North, Zone 4, which stretches from the Greater Toronto area all the way to the Manitoba border. I too want to welcome my members from Ontario North. I hope you do enjoy the AGM. I did mention earlier that the previous AGM was held in St. John's, Newfoundland in March of 2002, over 2 decades ago. And I did have the pleasure of attending that meeting. So I hope you enjoyed the AGM, and thank you for participating.
Push the button now.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alistair Sutherland, Director for Zone 5, Ontario East. I'd like to thank all of the members here in Newfoundland for a wonderful time so far. It's been amazing, and I'm half Newfoundlander, so I'm feeling like I've come home. Welcome as well to all members across the country, and specifically to my Zone 5 members. It's been a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to the meeting.
Bonjour tout le monde, Denis Gros-Louis, directeur pour le Québec et vice-président du conseil d'administration du Club Canin canadien. So to my members, I am Denis Gros-Louis and I'm director Zone 3 for Quebec. And I'm also vice chair of the board. And thank you for being here virtually or in presence. Thank you. Merci.
Hi, everyone. I'm Peter Scott, director for Zone 6, Western Ontario. And I'd like to thank everybody here again for the hospitality they've shown us. And I'm glad the people here can be here. And welcome to everybody across the country. I hope you enjoy the show.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mark Relsky from Lucky Zone 7. I'm really excited to be here. It's my first time in Newfoundland and having an amazing time, amazing hospitality, and I'm really looking forward to a great AGM, and also hope that our Zone 7 members are enjoying their AGM.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dave Gilmore. I represent the province of Saskatchewan in Zone 9. I as well would like to extend a hand out to the people that put on this AGM. It has been nothing short of fantastic. We've all had a great time, and I can honestly say I'm now double screeched.
Great.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leah. A lot of territory to cover. Thank you very much. More than hospitable, more.
Good afternoon here. Good morning in British Columbia. My name is Tempest Deptouch. I am the Zone 11 director, which covers BC Southwest, Vancouver Island, the Sunshine Coast, and the Lower Mainland. I'd also like to welcome all my members here, plus all the members from Zone 12, which is BC Interior, which is from Cranbrook all the way to the Yukon. And thanks everybody. My dad and I have spent a week here, and the Newfoundland hospitality has been amazing. And he finally got home last night, so everything is good to go. Thanks everybody for putting on a great show for all of us from British Columbia.
Thank you, Tempest. Jeff, please.
Good day, everyone. It's Jeff Cornett. I have the privilege of being your executive director at the Canadian Kennel Club. On behalf of all of the staff and myself, thank you for all of your support. Thank you for those in the room for attending, and thank you for everybody online for attending the AGM, which is an important piece of your governance of your club.
And our honorary chair.
Hi, I'm Dr. Tammy Dunbar. I'm from Portage la Prairie, Manitoba. I just want to thank the CKC for inviting me this weekend. It's been fabulous. And I am the 2021 honorary chair.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome all of our members who are attending today. Your participation in this meeting reflects your dedication to ensure that we, the CKC, remain responsive and effective in dealing with matters on your behalf. For those who have joined us virtually, thank you for taking the time out of what is, I am sure, a busy start to the show and trial season to listen in today. For our local members in person, thank you for making the trip to be with us today. It's wonderful to spend time with some of our most Eastern Canine community. Before we start on the business of today's meeting, I would like to ask for a moment of silence in memory of the members of the community that we've lost since our last AGM. Our sincere condolences go out to the family and friends of those who are no longer with us. Thank you. Our first item is the approval of the minutes of the 2021 annual general meeting. These minutes have been reviewed by the board and were previously posted for the membership on the website. As a result, no notice of errors or omissions was received. Unfortunately, at this time, those members who are joining us virtually are not eligible to vote. For the 2020 and 2021 AGMs, we were granted a special dispensation to supersede our bylaws and host our AGMs and voting virtually by Ag Canada. This year, we're returning back to normal, and in accordance with our CKC bylaws, only those CKC members who are attending in person are eligible to vote. Situations like this highlight the importance of member participation in our CKC referendums. In order to update our bylaws and add breeds to our list of recognized breeds, we are required to have referendums with a minimum of 25% of our membership participating. We're currently planning for a special referendum in late 2022, and virtual participation in AGMs will be on the docket. Please keep a watchful eye on all CKC communications, and when the referendum is called, please vote. We cannot move changes forward without our membership's help. So, for those members who are in the room with us in St. John's, I'm going to ask you to vote on the following motion by raising your hands. The motion is, it has been moved by Mark Rolski and seconded by Frank MacArthur, that the minutes of the 2021 annual general meeting held on June 5th, 2021 be adopted as circulated. If you are a member, please raise your hand if you are in support of this motion. Thank you. Now, please raise your hand if you're against the motion. Thank you. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. Correspondence. There has been no correspondence received for this meeting, so we'll move on to the next agenda item. So we're going to have the presentation of the 2021 audited financial statements. I will now introduce our auditor, Marcus Conci, who is a partner at BDO, to present the 2021 audited financial statement. After his presentation, he'll take a few minutes to address any audit related questions from the membership submitted through the Q&A feature on the left side of your computer screen. We also have present here Tanya Hatton, who is our audit committee chair, who can assist us with questions as well. The audit committee is comprised of member volunteers who work tirelessly throughout the year to assist CKC staff and the board, advising in areas of financial policy, development, assessment of control environment, and review our financials. A large thank you goes out to them for all their efforts over the past unprecedented years. Marcus?
All right, thank you. Can everybody hear me? Yes? Okay.
Hello, Marcus.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello,
Hallelujah.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, Marcus.
Yes, you can hear me? Okay, great. Thank you very much. So yes, as I was introduced, I'm Marcus Sconci and I'm the partner with BDO Canada, your external auditors. Before getting into my presentation, I just wanted to extend a thank you to Jeff and the management team at CKC, as well as Tanya and the audit committee. Audits are collaborative efforts between the auditor, the management team, and the audit committee. And without any one of those three pillars, we would not be able to complete another successful audit as we have. So thank you very much to those two groups of people. Now I'll go into my presentation, which is the audited financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2021. So on this first slide, you see page 1 of 2 of our auditor's report. So in your statement packages, it's actually a 2-page report. The auditor's report, which is addressed to you, the members, concludes with a clean opinion or an unmodified opinion again this year, which means that we completed our audit as planned. We did not encounter any difficulties or issues that prevented us from concluding that the audited financial statements are a fair presentation of the financial position and the financial results of CKC for the year ended December 31st, 2021. And the statements have been audited in accordance with Canadian accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations, which is a set of rules that is put in place by CPA Canada that all not-for-profit organizations must follow. So on to the first statement page. This is the statement of financial position, and this shows a summary of the assets, the liabilities, and the net assets of CKC as at December 31st, 2021, with comparatives for 2020. A few points that I wanted to raise here. Firstly, looking to the first 2 lines under the assets, the cash and the short-term investments, which show us a very strong combined liquid cash position of about $3.64 million. Obviously, and I know many people are familiar with the term cash is king, and especially in this pandemic environment, it's extremely important to have cash available because it allows you to invest in strategic projects, as well as to ensure you can cover off your operations. And a very strong cash position, which has grown from the prior year, is fantastic to see. Going down a few lines, the capital and intangible assets, which you can see has increased from 1.2 to 1.4 million. The increase there is due to asset additions of $416,000, which are mostly related to the ERP system, offset by amortization, which is another word for depreciation, of those capital assets of $240,000. Going down into the liabilities section, firstly, I wanted to point out deferred revenue. Deferred revenue, you can see, has increased from $286,000 to $580,000, which is a $293,000 increase, and that's due to higher membership renewals this year compared to last year. As well, you see deferred rent is now 0, and it was $146,000 in the prior year. That was a one-time 2-month rent deferral that was offered by the landlord as a COVID-related concession towards the end of the prior year. and that will no longer be an item going forward. And then finally, the deferred leasehold inducement, which is down from 180 to 100,000. That represents a rent-free period plus rent escalation over the term of the lease. The accounting rules require you to record rent on an average basis as opposed to a cash basis. So that liability is a notional liability that will come down to zero by the conclusion of the lease. On to the next page. This is the statement of operations. So rather than being at a point in time, this statement shows all of the revenue and expenses for the entire fiscal year ended December 31st, again with comparatives for the prior year. Firstly, you can see that total revenues are up by about $2 million from 5.34 to 7.34 million, which is fantastic to see. There's a couple of main drivers for that. The first, you can see the very first line, registrations are up from 3.5 to 4.8, which is a $1.3 million increase. That's due to two main factors. Firstly, there's been an increased demand for purebred dogs. And secondly, there was a registration backlog in the prior year, means unprocessed registrations. And as the CKC processed through that backlog, that revenue was recorded as registration revenue in 2021. The next large increase you can see is chosen trials, the third line item, which is up from 347K to about 865K. That increase amounts to $581,000. And that's an increase due to the COVID restrictions, which severely limited the ability to carry shows and trials in 2020. And now that those are starting to return to pre-pandemic levels, you can see a very healthy increase in that revenue. So now we'll move down to the expenses. First, looking at the total, the subtotal of expenses, they are also up from 5.4 to 6.5 million, which is an increase of about 1.09 million. The main driver for that is human resources expenses, which is up from 2.8 to 3.8 million, so an increase of about $1 million. And there's two reasons for this. Firstly, there's an increased headcount. There were some vacant positions in the prior year that were filled in 2021. And secondly, there was some CEWS funding received in 2020. That was one of the government subsidy programs that was offered to all organizations that qualified over the past couple of years. And that was $362,000 last year and was zero this year and was recorded as a reduction of this 2.8 million last year. So that has led to part of the increase this year. And then finally, going down to the bottom line, you see an excess of revenue over expenses of 771K compared to a deficit of 139K in the prior year. So overall, you're seeing about a $900,000 uptick in the bottom line, which is really what matters at the end of the day. So congratulations to management on a fantastic year. And those are great results, especially considering some of the uncertainties that remain due to COVID-19. This next page, I won't go through in detail. It's the statement of changes in net assets. Net assets represent the historical accumulation of revenue over expenses since the inception of CKC. You can see there's a couple of columns here for some restricted funds, amounts that have been set aside for a specific purpose, and they remain there until that purpose has been fulfilled. The main column here is this invested in capital assets. So CKC has spent $1.45 million of their funds on capital assets, which will be depreciated in future years over the useful life of those assets. And then the unrestricted net assets are now at 2.8 million. So this represents funds that are available either for strategic purposes in the future, or if there happens to be a deficit down the road, it is available to cover off that deficit. Next statement is the statement of cash flows, which summarizes sources and uses of cash. As I mentioned earlier, the importance of cash is paramount on any organization, and this statement is a reflection of the cash in and out over the course of the year. The most important line here is this subtotal of 1.06 million. This is cash that was provided by the general operations of the club over the year, which means prior to any investing or financing activities, there was over $1 million of cash generated strictly from operations, which is fantastic to see. And then 843,000 of that was spent on investing activities, about half on the purchase of capital and intangible assets, the other half on the purchase of short-term investments, which is really a cash item itself. So technically an investing activity, but really it's liquid and is available if needed. And then finally, the concluding line shows cash at the end of the year of 497K, which is up from the prior year of 238,000. And that ties to the statement of financial position. The remaining pages of the statements, I'm not going to go into detail on. They are the notes to the statements. Note 1 summarizes the accounting policies, which spells out how certain transactions have been reflected in the financial statements. In some cases, there are choices to how certain items can be recorded. So this enables you to understand the choices that management has chosen and that we have audited in the due course of our audit. Notes 2 to 12 are providing additional information to explain the items in the main statements that I just went through, providing some details as well as some disclosure around those items. A few notes to point out. Note 5 is new because it's a new balance this year. That was a small loan that was taken out to finance part of the purchase of a website. Note 7 is commitments to pay others under leases. It's important to note that these commitments are not required to be recorded as liabilities. So these are technically liabilities, but they're not recorded in the balance sheet as liabilities. Note 11 is the COVID-19 subsidy received in the prior year that I spoke to in the statement of operations. And note 12 discusses some of the high-level impact of COVID-19, both past and present. Most notably, really, just the fact that there remains a lot of uncertainty around COVID-19 and how it may impact the future of CKC. So that is the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions now if there are any.
Thank you, Marcus, for this presentation. Do we have any questions from the floor or members online? Est-ce que vous avez des questions pour nous? Présentement, je n'en vois pas. We have one question from the floor.
Sorry, I haven't had a chance
Can you
to
state
read
your
all-
name, please, and your zone?
My name is David Kelland, and I'm from Zone 1. I haven't had a chance to read all the notes, obviously. The government assistance that is COVID related, is any of that require repayment, and has that been addressed anywhere?
No, that does not require repayment. So that was the wage subsidy program that was offered for, I guess, most of the pandemic. And it was tied to revenue. So companies or organizations that had their revenues impacted by COVID were able to apply for wage subsidies, which partially subsidized payroll costs to prevent companies from having to terminate employees. So that was a subsidy that we audited in the prior year, and it does not require payback.
Thank you.
We have one question, a virtual question. Have there been any changes in the accounting policies this year that affect the financial outcomes of the financial statements? If there are, the changes going to remain in place and consistency kept?
That is a very good question. The answer is no, there have not been any changes. And if there are changes in accounting policies, we are required to disclose that in the notes to the financial statements. So you would always know if there are those items, because we'd add a note that would explain what the change is and would also quantify the impact of that change.
Thank you. C'est tout.
Thank you, Marcus, for your presentation.
You're welcome.
All right, we're now going to move on to the chair's report. When I reflect on 2021, I'm amazed what we've come through as an organization. We started the year off with a brand new executive director, Jeff Cornett. He was not only new to staff, but also new to the dog show community. His not-for-profit background was exactly what we needed. A fresh look at how we could adapt and thrive under the challenges that we now face. As Marcus, our auditor, mentioned, we ended a year that we initially projected would have had a $344,000 loss, with a surplus of $771,000, a $1.1 million improvement. Amazing. We dug ourselves out of a monumental registration backlog through the hard work and countless hours of dedicated staff and volunteers, and through the patience and understanding of you, our members. We closed the IT for You project in June and have moved into a maintenance and growth phase for our new computer system. We're now registering a record number of dogs online faster than we've ever managed before. Applications such as TCNs are now instantaneous, and most litter registrations submitted through the portal are processed and completed the same day. In addition, most Canadian-born registrations are processed within 1 to 5 days, and applications submitted by Member Plus members are processed the following business day. We all worked through what turned out to be another year of lockdowns, with restrictions easing during the spring and summer, with shows and trials returning en masse, rivaling pre-pandemic levels. Only 156 performance and confirmation events were scheduled in the first half of the year, an 89% decrease compared to pre-pandemic years. Events returned with a vengeance in the second half of the year, with 1,900 events scheduled. Our clubs and their members have shown their strength and determination through the past year by thinking outside the box and holding events under less than ideal circumstances. From COVID-19 waivers, to wristbands, to vaccination status confirmation at check-in, our clubs have kept competitors as safe as possible while still allowing us all to compete. We welcome Canuck Dogs into our family. The strategic acquisition allowed CKC not only to benefit from Sue's expertise and years of dedication to the canine community, but also allowed us to support our members with the tools they need in their shows and trials journeys. We're now in the early days of our new normal. Just as our clubs and volunteers learn to adapt and adapt again, our organization is becoming more nimble and proactive. With the hiring of Jeff as our executive director, we've taken a huge step into developing CKC into being more responsive and more forward-thinking. We're striving to become a better communicator to our membership and all dog lovers in Canada. I see in our future a club that will be the go-to source for everything canine. We will strive to grow our base membership, become a larger online presence, and be everything canine resource center. CKC is not just shows and trials, not just registrations. We're so much more. I would like to thank the volunteers that have dutifully served on our councils and committees, and the CKC staff for their dedication and hard work through this past year. Thank you to my fellow CKC board members, 8 of who were new in 2021. They've willingly given of their time to attend meetings, answer inquiries, communicate to members, and be the go-to persons within their zones. Thank you for having the passion to sit through hours of Zoom meetings, read hundreds of pages of motions, and stay current on the complex and ever-changing issues. These next 2 years in our term will be an exciting time for the CKC. This board and their committees are hard at work at all sorts of new initiatives that'll be very exciting when launched. Thank you to the members for entrusting us with your club. We will strive to meet and exceed your expectations. To speak on some of the work to come and some that's already underway, I'll now turn the mic over to Jeff, our executive director.
I think that was for you, not for me.
No.
Thank you, Corrine. It's a pleasure to be here in beautiful St. John's, and it's a pleasure to have our local club members here with us in person. And it is a pleasure to have our members with us virtually through our new technology platform. The annual general meeting is designed for our members, so I'm pleased that you are here both in person and online in what truly is hopefully the best of both worlds. There is a lot going on with your club, and so I'll jump right into my report, and so as to leave the full amount of time for questions, which is what I think is the priority of the AGM. So we'll move right into finance first, and basically Marcus gave you a very good success of 2021, and I'm here to tell you that the first 4 months of 2022 has also been very positive. You'll see on the next slide, our revenue is up by about 240,000 more than what we had budgeted. And at this point in the first 4 months, our expenses are actually a little bit less than what we had budgeted. Now, I'll caution you on the expense that some of those expenses are still not realized. And to be honest, not spending the money like we would have liked to on some of the staffing with empty positions has led to some challenges. So that expense savings probably will not continue for the rest of the year. But the revenue we are projecting to be $500,000 more by the end of the year than what we had budgeted. We have done a Q1 quarterly reforecast, and we're expecting to go from a $200,000 surplus that we had budgeted up to a $400,000 budget surplus. So good news all around on that. We'll move on to operations. So registrations has also been a success through the course of this year. And on the next slide, you'll see a couple of lines on the graph. Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. Membership. Membership is doing very well. So our membership numbers, we had grown, I think it was 7% from 20 to 21. We have budgeted and set a goal to grow another 5% this year, and we're well on our way to meeting that growth target for this year's membership. We're about 1,300 more members at the end of May than we had at the end of May last year. A lot of our members like to take their time to get their memberships in, so we know that there will be more memberships that come over the course of the next 6 months, and we're confident that we'll hit our membership goal. I also like to point out the number of new members that joined the club, over 1,700 so far in this year, and that will continue to go up as well. The next slide is our registration slide, and on that you'll see 3 lines. The blue line is the dog and litter applications that we received on a monthly basis. The orange line is the dog and litter applications that we complete on a monthly basis, and the gray line is the applications that are open at the end of the month that we're working on. I will remind you, when I first started, we had 21,000 applications that were still needed to be processed. We brought that down, if my memory calls, to about 6,000 by June, and then we continued to bring that number down to what I think is a stable, appropriate service level of about 4,000 applications opened at any given time. About 40% are actually in our members' hands for more information or for payment at any given time. So I think a very good news on the service levels for registrations. The next slide, we go into the show and event results. Oh, I'm sorry. Litter registrations by litter month. This was a graph that we developed last year. I think it's a very important graph for this club. The blue lines represent 9 years of data from 2011 to 2019. And you can see the seasonality in that blue line in the spring with a higher litter. The orange lines are 2020, and you can see the first 6 months of 2020, pretty average, and then July hit. And that's when the term pandemic puppies we started to hear, and we saw the increase. And that increase continued for the balance of 2021. The next slide has the green lines, which is, orange is 2020, green is 2021. You can see that 2021 continued much higher than average, but as we came to the end of 2021, we had started to drop down to near normal levels. There is up to a 6-month delay for breeders to actually register the litters, so we're still tracking how the early months of 2022 will go. Okay, now I believe, if I remember, our shows and trials slide should be next. There we go. So again, comparing pre-pandemic, you can see 2019, which is pretty indicative of prior years with our events. First half is blue, second half of the year is orange, and then the dismal 2020 with the pandemic, and then the dismal first half of 2021. And then the world opened up for us, and we came back, as Corrine said, with a vengeance, with shows. And then 2022, these are the shows that have already happened, plus all of the date applications we have received, which you'll notice is slightly higher than pre-pandemic levels. We'll talk about this a little bit later in my quick presentation, but like so many other industries, the sharp contraction and then growth has created challenges for us on the operations side, just as I know it has had challenges for the club executives and club secretaries in hosting shows as well. Okay, so I think that's the end of the operations slides, and I sort of want to mention some of the projects that we have completed, and then other projects that we will be completing before the end of the year. So as mentioned, there is a lot going on within your club. I'll start with our employees. The CKC staff form a small yet very mighty team that are dedicated to the service of this club. Many employees are active members, and we have our fair share of breeders within the staff team, and many of our staff have championship dogs of their own from the various sports that they participate in. Unfortunately, it feels that I think we have lost a little bit of focus on our staff when we dealt with the collapse of our IT systems and then the rebuilding of the IT systems. So we have made it a priority to focus on our staff for the last half of the last year and going forward. We purposely engaged in employee training, and we have a focus on the culture and values that make up a strong team and supporting that team with best practices. We've some new values. We want our staff to be open, committed, and we want them to enjoy the journey as the CKC employees. And the second project you'll see there is the HR system. There were a number of infrastructure systems that needed to be updated, and we've started that work. The old HR system was outdated. It was not supported. It was very manual and time consuming. At the beginning of the year, we're able to convert to a modern payroll and employee management system to streamline and upgrade our operations. The new system allows for improved people management and improved operational efficiencies. The third bullet, it was another critical infrastructure upgrade, which was to our financial systems. We are now back on to a fully supported and modern system that allows for improved communication between our CRM system, where all the membership and registration and event data is, and our financial systems. And then the fourth bullet point on this slide, the fee schedule, which is routine. Every several years, we look at the fee schedule. And this time we had the goal of trying to simplify it a little bit. It is a very complicated fee schedule. And we wanted to incent operational efficiency and to have a revenue increase so we could fund the CKC mission. And I'd like to thank the support of all of our members in this initiative. Okay, so next slide. We have the reality that not everything has gone to plan. As mentioned, we struggled with the impact of COVID. Impact of COVID that we had on our events. The processing of 2021 results and titles was not what we wanted and was longer than what we expected. I will say the lasting impact of COVID will and is impacting us for 2022. The good news is that it will be a very big year with lots of events and lots of entries. But again, this sort of changing has been difficult, and we have struggled to keep up with the pace and some of the COVID exceptions that we've continued to allow. We have hired more staff. We are cross-training existing staff so they can help the event team. And we also realize that some of the processes feel very outdated and need to be modernized for the whole shows and trials world. That takes us to the second one, which is good news. It's a good news every year, and that despite the twists and turns of last year, we were happy to share in and celebrate another year of Canada's top dogs. Over 2,000 of your dogs were celebrated in their efforts with amazing results, and congratulations to all of those winners. The third bullet point, at the last year's AGM, we're very excited to announce the acquisition of Canuck Dogs and that Sue Coughlin was joining the CKC team. Sue and team have been improving the functionality of Canuck Dogs, and we have just launched a title search on the title search page on Canuck Dogs. This will allow users, including clubs, to search by event type, breed, dog, and titles from 1990 and onwards. And then you can download those title results to an Excel spreadsheet. And on the CKC member portal, results from the remainder of the event types are now visible on the individual My Dog pages. We've also improved the registration emails so they're more easily identified as coming from CKC and don't get lost in your inbox. And they have an additional customized information in those emails to help with your processing. And a bonus one that is not so new, it's not even on this presentation, effective this week, we'll be improving how we mail registration certificates so that multiple certificates will arrive in the same envelope, which I know has been a frustration for some people. If your dog registrations were paid for in the same time frame and had correct information so they could be finalized in the same time frame, they will now mail in the same envelope. Okay, so what's next? I'll start with what is a big one for me. Our current lease for the CK offices expires next year. I'm pleased to say that an extensive planning period and then an extensive search, we have signed a new lease for new office space. From a staff perspective, the new office will be smaller, support a hybrid collaborative work environment. From a financial perspective, I'm pleased to say that our lease costs will drop to 1/3 of what we're currently paying, a 64% reduction in lease costs or monthly rental costs starting next year and going forward. Over the next 10 months, we will, thank you. I also say, and it's not on my notes, so I'm getting in trouble here. Lease was our third most highest expense line. It's now dropped to our seventh, or will drop to our seventh level expense line going forward. So significant savings. Our phone system is another maybe somewhat boring project, but a good example of working to upgrade important systems that have been neglected. We're upgrading our phone system to a cloud-based system with modern functionality. We'll be able to offer our members new features such as advising how many people are in queue in front of you and allowing you to request a callback if you don't have time to wait for that queue. The live chat functionality will allow you to share your screen with us. So if you're having troubles, you can share your screen and our CSRs will be able to help you with that screen. From a management perspective, we'll be able to have better reporting so we can improve our operational efficiency and provide better member service at the same time. Another big project for later on this year, potentially early next year. Actually, I'm going to rephrase that. For next year, if we do better, we'll let you know. Another big project is the redesign of our public website. We have engaged a professional website usability and design company to meet with puppy seekers, new puppy owners, CKC breeders, and event participants. The result will be a more engaging and friendly website that promotes and supports purebred dogs and all of our breeds. As the design of the new website continues, we'll be reaching out to our breed clubs to get important content and expertise for that new website that we will launch. As with the website, we're also making improvements to our member portal. We have also engaged usability professionals to meet with our members who use our portal. New improvements will include an improved Canadian dog application where 80% of the registrations come through that one application. There'll be less questions asked. There'll be an improved speed. You'll be able to ability to save and then resume your dog applications. There'll be easier uploading of your supporting documents, and you'll be able to preview your registration certificate before you finalize your application, and therefore allows you to see what you've entered and make whatever improvements. In addition to the Canadian Born Dog app, we also have online pedigrees in the My Dog pages that will be coming, and we'll have a list of your incomplete litters so you can go back and finalize the litters easily. Okay, on to another one. We are building good relations with the American Kennel Club. Corrine and I were invited down to the AKC Nationals in December and met with the senior management and some of the board members there. Myself and the staff team went down to the AKC Operational Center in North Carolina. One of the projects we have agreed upon is to support reciprocal registrations for each of our clubs. When registering your dog on the CKC site, you'll be able to register your dog with the AKC at the same time. Likewise, when Americans are on the AKC site, they can simply also ask for their dog to be registered with us. I think that's a good thing because the process will be faster and seamless, but also I think equally important, will encourage more Americans to register with the CKC and therefore hopefully encourage them to come up to Canada for our events. Thora Brown and the ROE committee have been doing an amazing job preparing ROEs that are required under the Animal Pedigree Act. The working and terrier groups will be ready for member approval, and so we'll be holding a special referendum that Karine talked about at the end of this year. We'll also take the opportunity to include up to 5 new breeds to be recognized by the CKC, and we'll be updating some of our bylaws, like the ability to vote virtually, not just in person. As a member-based club, we need your support for these important changes to our bylaws, and we strongly encourage you to help us get out the vote. More information will come, and we'll hopefully count on your support with that special referendum. July 12th, we're going to be hosting a symposium on healthy dog breeding. It's being presented by the International Partnership for Dogs and CKC in collaboration with the Canadian Veterinary Medical Association. It will feature presentations from the breeder's perspective, show judge, veterinarian community, and the pet industry. The symposium will showcase what CKC, IPFD, and CVMA are doing to tackle the complex issues around brachycephalic breeds. CKC will be well presented by our members, Dr. Paul Eckford, Dr. Terrell Udenberg, and our own Richard Perquette. And as a special bonus, we'll be hosting a members-only webinar on the subject on June 29th as a primer for the one with the CVMA and IPFD. We're also pleased to announce that we're making changes to our student bursary program. Our goal is to do a better job of supporting future veterinarians and building relationships with all 5 of the veterinarian colleges. Currently, we offer one $1,000 scholarship, which rotates every year between 5 colleges. As you can imagine, that doesn't really build a lot of goodwill with the veterinarian colleges. So we've upped our game. We'll be offering 5 $2,000 scholarships so that we have ongoing relationships every year with all 5 colleges in a slightly more meaningful way. Thank you. Okay, saving the best for last, which is the next slide. There we go. I'd like to talk about our planning for a CKC Integrated Breed Health Program. You might notice a theme here with our guest speaker. We are a not-for-profit, and as such, we are a mission-based organization. Part of that mission is the health and preservation of purebred dogs. I and your board feel we can do more to support our breeders. We have the best breeders in Canada, yet we can do more to raise the aggregate expertise of our CKC breeders. We can do more to encourage new breeders to join into our breeding traditions. We can do more to encourage breeders who are not living up to our standards to join in and raise their game. And we need the ability to weed out those that hide behind the CKC brand, yet are not interested in the sustainable health of purebreds. With the right breed health program, we'll be able to demonstrate to external stakeholders that CKC breeders are consistently the best. Policymakers, the dog buying public, and the media need to know that CKC members can consistently be counted on to be the best. With a strong program, we can help ensure the growth of healthy, well-bred dogs in Canada. How are we going to accomplish this, you might ask? And that's a very good question, one that I am not the person to answer. Luckily, the membership of the Canadian Kennel Club has an amazing pool of talented breeders. They run excellent programs with deep expertise in running their own breeding programs. 2 of them are leading our core pieces of what we call the Integrated Breed Health Program. I'd like them to tell you more about this program. I'd like to introduce to you first Stuart Danker, who is the chair of our Breeders Relationship Committee, and then Dr. Paul Eckford, former board member and chair of our Genetics and Medical Committee, who are here via prepared videos.
Good afternoon. My name is Stuart Dankner, and I'm the chair of the Breeder Relations Committee. Some of you may or may not know me, but I've been actively breeding Rhodesian Ridgebacks with my wife, Jackie, for over 25 years, and we've been involved in confirmation and some obedience. In the development of our goals and visions for a breeder certification program, it was very important to use some of the commentary that Jeff Cornett has provided earlier to support our breeders, raise the aggregate experience of the breeders, encourage new breeders to breed to the highest levels, develop those standards with breeders, and to always align with the goals of the membership and the mission, vision, values of our Canadian Kennel Club, which is to establish our CKC breeders as the gold standard. Our goals and visions will set the standard for the preservation of the breeds and to continuous improvement of health, well-being, and enjoyment of purebred dogs. First step is engagement. The recently completed breeder certification survey was a huge success. Success, you say? Yes, I do. The committee received over 2,000 responses, and from those responses, over 400 were from French-speaking members, breeders. These responses came from all demographics, all levels of breeding experience, and different levels of membership ranging from 1 to 50 years. Many of the respondents were willing to provide their names, which gives us an opportunity to drill down on some of the feedback. At a high level, the results told us that there is a need for the breeder certification program. Now, it is our responsibility to develop the framework to ensure we can capture all the possible demographics to ensure no group is left behind. We must make sure that we create an opportunity to add value for our breeders in reducing cost, easier access to resources, partnering with other organizations to provide synergies, simplified registration processes, health testing, and developing a reward recognition program. In discussion, it was made perfectly clear that this program should not be about penalties. Instead, it should be about encouraging, educating, and promoting CKC breeders. Our CKC breeders will be considered the best of the best, producing the best of the best inside the show ring and as part of the community. Thank you for your time today, and look for regular communications coming out from our committee.
Hello, my name is Dr. Paul Eckford. I'm a CKC member, breeder, a scientist, and I'm the chair of the CKC Genetics and Medical Committee. I'd like to talk to you today about some of the initiatives that we're involved in. Specifically, in the development of a CKC DNA testing program. I was involved with the Genetics and Medical Committee for several years before I was on the board of directors, and now again as the chair. And a DNA program has been the topic of discussion for the committee for many years. Unfortunately, we lacked a robust IT system to help support a DNA program, and it was difficult to get this project off the ground. Now that we do have such a system in place, this is the ideal time to get a DNA program integrated into that system. So you may be aware that there are some policies within the organization where DNA parentage testing is required. However, DNA technology has advanced a lot and can be used a lot more powerfully. For example, we could integrate a DNA program with our registry so that it would allow us to verify each dog as they were entered to ensure that the parentage is indeed correct. Newer technologies are also allowing health testing to be done alongside parentage testing. And we're very interested in linking this information to the profiles for dogs in our IT system and providing additional helpful information for breeders as they're breeding their dogs. Along with the DNA program, we would also like to include in the IT system a phenotypic health registry. So we know that not all conditions currently can be identified using genetics. And many of our members do a variety of health testing and certifications, including on eyes, knees, hips, etc. We would like to make it so that this information can be included in the IT system and on pedigrees so that it can be used to help breed better, healthier dogs. Many breeds also have some form of a health strategy developed through the breed club. We would like to bring this in a more standardized way across all of the breeds that the CKC recognizes. We'll be working on a program to develop and support this concept for all of our breeds and breed clubs and member breeders as well. These programs are under development right now, and we'll be working with partners, including internationally, to bring these to our members. So those are some of the things that we're working on and you can look forward to. And we're very excited to move these programs forward. Thank you.
All right, so thank you for Stuart and the Breeders' Relationship Committee members who are here, and Paul and the Genetics and Medical Committee members who are here. They've got a very large project ahead of them that as a staff and the board will be supporting them with, and hopefully for the betterment of the purebreds and the CKC Club. So I'm going to close now. I would like to thank two special thank yous. Well, three. First is the warm hospitality. It has been absolutely wonderful to be. The second one is to the hardworking staff team, not only in the preparation of what is actually a more complex hybrid and in-person meeting, but the whole preparation of this weekend, and actually for the last 18 months that I've had the opportunity to work with them. You have a very amazing staff team at your disposal, and it's a pleasure to be with them. And then the third special thank you is to the board. I am new to this world. It was a new board for me, and I've thoroughly enjoyed working with this board over the last 18 months, in all honesty. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Now we have the presentation of the annual report. I'd like to hand the microphone over to our vice chair, Denny, who will highlight some of the activities of our committees and councils and the dedicated member volunteers that sit on them. There you go, honey.
Thank you, Corrine. And on behalf of all the committees and councils, it's my pleasure to present the 2021 Samoyed of the Year, annual report. Where is he? Oh, he's getting water. Just kidding. I'm serious sometimes. So on the screen, you can see some snippets from this year's report. You can also find a copy in your meeting package, which for those in person was right outside when you walked in. And it's in your resources in your platform if you are attending virtually. The annual report has also been posted on the ckc.ca homepage. The annual report not only contains reports on the activities of our committees and councils, but it also showcases photos of our members' beautiful purebred dogs. It has stories that speak to the activities of the club and its members in 2021, and acts as a summary of our challenges and our achievements during the year. I'd like to say a big thank you to the CKC members who volunteer their times and expertise as members of our committees and councils. It's a twist tongue. Your work as subject matter experts and CKC representatives in your canine communities helps to shape and guide your club's progress. It is your club. For members who have not had the opportunity to volunteer with a committee or council yet, I encourage you to seek out members in your area with whom you are currently involved. Join your local event hosting clubs or volunteer with your breed club. there are always opportunities for you to get engaged and positively impact your canine communities. There is actually one question about challenges in some provincial with our relationship with provincial governments, and it's at that particular time that everyone's got to step up. If it's about a topic that may not affect your breed, it may down the line affect your breed. So please step up. And thank you for my colleagues, because we are volunteers and we do spend a lot of time. A lot of members think we're paid to do that. No, we're not. We're having a good time, but no, it's volunteer. But we have over 500 volunteers throughout committees and council that participate in our activities. So that's pretty much what I had to say. And I like that one.
Okay. Each year, a member of the CKC is appointed to the position of honorary chair. I'm pleased to introduce our 2021 honorary chair, Dr. Tammy Dunbar, DVM, from Portage Prairie, Manitoba. Tammy has kindly agreed to present the members who are celebrating 50 years of membership. Tammy.
Merci, Corinne. Today, I have the honor to congratulate more than 60 members who are being recognized for their 50 years of dedication to the purebred dog and their dog-related activities. Congratulations to all their families, the canine communities who have supported them in all their dog-related activities for the past 50 years. Many of the names you see up here are friends and family. They are members of your canine communities and names of mentors and giants in the dog world who you look up to. You've competed with them or against them, and maybe you've had the distinct pleasure of gaining some knowledge and training from them, learning from their 50 years of experience. The names on the list are people who have been driving our breeds, our dog sports for the past 50 years. They have shaped CKC into what it is today and made it so that all of us can continue to enjoy the breeds and dog sports we hold dear. 50 years. 50 years of memories and milestones. 50 years of trips to the vet, trips to the shows, trials, and tests. 50 years of staying up late or not sleeping at all, whelping and raising puppies. 50 years of raising dogs to be the best of the best, whether in the ring or in the field, or most importantly, in our homes. 50 years of dedication to purebred dogs. We owe everyone on this 50 years membership list not only our wholehearted congratulations, but also our thanks. Thanks for their years of support, their knowledge and guidance, and their continued work within our CKC community. I encourage you all listening today to reach out to someone on the list and get to know them a little better. I guarantee you'll learn a little bit more about yourself, your breed, and your sport. Thank you to everyone on the list for your 50 years of passion, your 50 years of dedication to the purebred dog. Thank you, Danny.
Congratulations to all those members that have achieved this absolute awesome milestone, 50 years. Tammy Dunbar's term as the honorary chair ends as of today, so we don't have to call her ma'am anymore. On behalf of the board and the membership, I'd like to thank you for your dedication to CKC, your years of volunteerism and commitment to purebred dogs, both as a breeder and as a veterinarian, has allowed the CKC to flourish, and we appreciate all your contributions. During our quarterly meeting, the board appointed Joan Bennett to serve as the 2022 honorary chair. Joan from British Columbia has been actively involved in purebred dogs since 1965. She served four terms on the board as a Zone 11 director and is the past chair of the board of directors as well. Congratulations, Joan, and welcome as our 2022 honorary chair. It is the best part of the day. The chair's awards. Chair's awards. There we go. I have the pleasure of presenting the CKC Chairs Awards. This is the second year for these National Member Awards. The Chairs Awards recognizes the outstanding commitment, dedication, and accomplishments of CKC members. Nominations for these awards were submitted by CKC members, and on behalf of our past chair of the board, Joan Bennett, our honorary chair, Dr. Tammy Dunbar, and myself, I'm honored to introduce the 2022 Chairs Award recipients. Our first award recognizes an individual with significant achievements in heritage performance events, such as CKC hunting type and field trial events, herding, lure coursing, and many others. This year's winner has been breeding and competing in heritage performance events with her Australian Shepherds for almost 30 years. She's worked to continuously learn and improve education opportunities in the sport of herding, teaching and sharing her knowledge across North America and Europe. And I am proud to present the 2022 CKC National Heritage Canine Performance Award to Tanya Wheeler. For over 10, thank you. For over 10 years, Tanya has either owned, bred, or trained the top herding dogs in Canada. She and her dogs have been invited to multiple times to compete as one of the top 20 dogs at the International ASCA Stock Dog Championships, placing in the top 10 overall with 3 of her dogs. She has mentored and supported countless people over the years, sharing her knowledge, expertise, and advice. She has been critical to hosting, organizing, and executing a multitude of CKC events. Tanya is a wonderful ambassador for herding, for the CKC, and for Canada, and we're honored to present her with the 2022 CKC National Heritage Canine Performance Award. Congratulations, Tanya. Our next award recognizes a breeder or teams of breeders who have dedicated their life to improving the health and well-being of purebred dogs. These people were recognized internationally. This year's 2022 CKC National Breeder of the Year winners are experts in their chosen breed. To quote their nominator, their list of achievements over their career as dog breeders is too long to list. Having dedicated their lives to showcasing and sharing their love for the amazing Samoyed breed, I am proud to present the 2022 CKC National Breeder of the Year Award to Judy and Blair Elford of Vanderbilt Samoyeds. Judy and Blair have been breeding as a family unit since the mid-1980s. They're recognized around the world as one of the leading Samoyed kennels and have a long list of amazing achievements with their dogs, including capturing the #1 dog, all breeds in the United States in 2021. Wow. In addition to breeding, Judy is also a well-respected CKC all-breed judge. Her love for our sport shines through in everything she does, and we are honored to present Judy and Blair with the 2022 CKC National Breeder of the Year Award. Congratulations. Lastly, and she's from Newfoundland. Come home. Yes, come home. Our third award recognizes an individual for significant achievement in CKC obedience or rally obedience. For many of you in the West Coast, this is not going to be the first time you've heard their name called for an award. I'm proud to present the 2022 CKC National Competitor of the Year Award to Ward Faulkner. In a career spanning over 50 years and still competing, Ward Faulkner has ranked amongst Canada's top 10 all-breed obedience teams for numerous years. Competing in Canada and the US, working with 4 different dogs, Ward has steered his dogs to over 250 high-end trials and over 75 perfect scores of 200. Yes. His immense legacy includes winning the Aska Eukanuba National Obedience Invitational in 2011 and then again in 2012, earning his canine team member the title of 2011 and 2012 National Obedience Champion. That's down in the States now. In addition to competing, Ward is the author of numerous articles on dog obedience, training, and behavior. He's been an obedience instructor for over 20 years and hosts training seminars across North America. He is an excellent example of how competition does not have to equal an unfriendly atmosphere. He's always willing to help others and believes that remuneration is found in the success of his students. We're honored to present Ward with the 2022 CKC National Obedience Competitor Award of the Year. Thank you. Congratulations to our winners. Your dedication to our sport and your canine communities raises us all to a higher level. And with that wonderful news, and since there is no unfinished business, I'll now turn the mic over to Nini, who will open the meeting for questions.
Merci, Corinne. Je voudrais rappeler aux membres qu'ils peuvent envoyer les questions en utilisant la section dans votre portail à gauche si vous êtes en ligne. C'est marqué questions et réponses et elles me sont envoyées sur un écran géant ici. So the first question is, recently governing bodies in Quebec have suggested planning to give the authority to veterinarians to determine if a dog or a bitch is eligible for breeding. I am concerned that this will negatively affect the preservation on many purebred dogs, especially rare breeds. Can you please speak to the CKC's view on this and action to be taken, if any? Guess what? I'm the one to answer that one. We have struck a committee of 3 monitoring a position paper that is being drafted. It's actually 2/3 down. And we are surveying some breed clubs, especially in the working field type retriever, spaniel, who have had docking performed on the dogs for centuries, so that we can educate the regulator. And I am to meet with the Assistant Deputy Minister of that ministry in 2 weeks when I will table that position paper. So there is a lot of activities. We have sent an email to members so that they can provide feedback to Serge Bilodeau, who is the CKC rep on the governance, the government relations. Is it a committee or council? Committee? And we are building up the file as for tabling it to the ADM in 2 weeks. So we're working on it.
Can I add?
Of course you can, free of charge.
The Integrated Breed Health Program is exactly the kind of program that would help us when having these conversations with the policymakers. Because right now, we really don't have anything to say. We know our breeders are the best, but we have no rational, objective thing to point to prove that they are the best. This would help Denis and his volunteers who are tackling this issue.
Second question, how does the registration ban on Russian-born dogs align with CKC's mission statement, vision, and values? Why was the decision not put for members' vote, and when will the ban be lifted?
So here's what I'd say on this. The The Canadian Kennel Club is part of the Canadian Society and not separate from the Canadian Society. And as a Kennel Club, we're part of the global society as well. And the sanctions, which were very limited, are the sanctions that we had within our mandate to show our objection to the invasion in the Ukraine. And so we did what was in with our mandate with regards to this global issue. It was a unanimous vote from the board. It was also something that followed after the FCI, who has both Russia and Ukraine in their FCI, followed the UK Kennel Club in the UK, followed the American Kennel Club and other kennel clubs around the world. So that was our response.
And by the way, our good friends here are allowed to ask questions within the 45 minutes we set aside. So just step forward, go to the mic, give your name. And of course, I presume that you're from Zone 1, and we will let you ask the question for as long as it's not towards me. And we do have a question.
My name is Gary Tucker. I'm a member of Heritage. I'm just wondering if somebody could speak to the activities that's going on with the Brachycephalic Advocacy Committee.
Our committee has been very active and has been actually formed for about 2.5 years now. So we did see the writing on the wall. We are working on a 3-pillar education program. We want to educate breeders, we want to educate the public, and we want to educate judges when they judge brachy breeds. So there will be some new policy, hopefully, with respect to judges having to do a bit more education. Dr. Terrell Udenberg is working on a module for education for judges. Now, with respect to the health and welfare of breeding good brachy breeds, that's what we're working on. The other hat I just acquired is that Government Relations Committee. And I know that, my presence on that committee will hopefully bring the pressure that we are getting from government, veterinarians, animal activist organizations to the forefront. So yes, we are concerned about our brachy breeds, and the CKC is very proactive to coming up with policies, recommendations that will not restrict the breeding of our beautiful breeds.
Thank you, Richard. And there are some highlights of the work that was done by the Brachy Committee on page 59 of the annual report. The next question is from D, so I don't know, given name. In regard to fee schedule, isn't it a bit much to charge for paper certificates? As well, why is the registration paper of a dog or puppy transferred to a new owner sent to the breeder and not directly to the new owner? Isn't it improper to send this legal document to someone who no longer owns the dog?
I'm going to take that one. I'm a breeder, and as a breeder, I want to see the registration papers of the puppies that I have sold. I want to have a final look at it to make sure that everything on there is accurate as I supplied it. I also want to take a copy for my own records so that I can have that as part of my own records. The bottom line is you can have it sent as a PDF, and you can email it to the owners, and then the owners don't have to worry about receiving things in the mail. I'm going to brain fart. It costs us more to mail it. Then people take the registration papers, they tuck it in a drawer and never look at it again. It's far better to have it as a computer file. You can put it on your laptop, you have it, it's there. And since we've given people the option of having a PDF, over one third of
dog registrations are now PDF, and 2/3 of litter registrations are now PDF because breeders now have the choice.
So it's faster. You don't have to worry about Canada Post sending it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The second question is, okay, I thought I heard some. Regarding CKC-AKC collaboration, would CKC consider not penalizing members who co-breed with U.S. dog breeders by not charging non-member fees to litters or individual dog registrations co-bred, co-owned with Americans? IMO non-members fees should apply only to Canadians. Oh,
Okay, this is an easy one. You can save so much money on a litter registration and individual registrations by simply buying your American co-owner a CKC membership. Because once you get your member rate, you're going to save that money several times over. It is not a punishment designed to hurt anyone. We encourage people to become CKC memberships, whether you live in Canada or in the United States. Thank you.
Andrew, I need questions. So, Fiat, are you not concerned that a digital pedigree or registration can be very easily counterfeited?
Counterfeited.
Did I pronounce well?
You did. You did very
Okay.
well.
I'm trying to have the Newfoundland accent. It doesn't work. I was screeched in, but
CKC maintains
Translation.
anyone is concerned that a registration has been altered, they can contact the Canadian Kennel Club, and we will deal with the counterfeiter appropriately. Thank you.
Mark.
Thanks. I've got
Mike.
I've got a member question who wasn't able to post online. It's a little long and I didn't write this, so I'm just reading it. Most clubs that offer limited breed shows or theme shows very rarely use the smaller groups 2, 4, and 6. Instead, they choose groups 1, 3, and 7, which bring in more revenue. Why not, instead of a theme show, which offers no points beyond the breed, give clubs the opportunity to do a theme show if they choose, or do a group 2, 4, and 6 limited on what is now a chosen theme show day? This gives groups an opportunity to reap the benefits of points, which groups 1, 3, and 7 benefit from. Many in the 3 smaller groups complain that they don't ever have the opportunity of a limit show. With the cost of entries and attending our shows, why not offer something that counts to the smaller groups?
Richard.
All of these themed shows are products of the out-of-the-box thinking of individual kennel clubs. Now, we have so many rules, procedures, and policies already in the CKC rule books. We try to allow clubs to think outside the box when we have policy that allows for these types of shows. So, yet again, involvement. If indeed you're a member of an all-breed club, or you're not a member of an all-breed club, you should be joining and lobbying those clubs to have events more specific to your breeds. So we don't want to be Big Brother. We want to let clubs have advantages, think outside the box, and that is why it's more club-driven than CKC-driven. So if you're having a problem not having sanction matches or whatever, you need to join your local kennel club and promote these activities within your club. And when the show committees are establishing the rules and policies for these themed shows, you need to have your input, because everything is generated at the local all-breed kennel club level. Join your club.
I don't have any more question. No.
I have one more. Sorry to. I have a message from Judy and Blair Elford. They want to wish their fellow provincial friends a hearty thank you, and they really are honored to have received that award and wanted to thank everyone who nominated and voted for them, and they really appreciate it.
So we have a question from Barbara regarding the new CFIA regulations regarding importing dogs to Canada. Is CKC working with CFIA to make importing a single puppy less onerous, virtually impossible for a CKC member?
The answer to the question is yes. We've been working with the CFA on the importation rule change since it came out last spring. It has been a lesson in frustration. We have met with them multiple times. We've sent multiple letters. We've sent recommendations of what they should do, from reclassifying commercial because the existing rules before the change made no sense. They have not accepted anything. And unfortunately, last week, we got an email from them basically saying, no, we're not making any changes to the new rules we put in last year. I think the reality is that almost all dog breeders have just gone around and they're no longer using the commercial, and they've got someone's name on it who is not recognized as a breeder on Facebook. And we pointed this out to them. They don't seem to care. So I'm not sure what else our next steps are. As we say, we just got that letter last week, but we'll continue to look at it. But it has been a very frustrating experience for me working with that level of government.
Thank you, Jeff. We may have, with the question and answer section of the portal, a little issue getting your questions. So you can also write by email to agm@ckc.ca. Send your questions and they will be forwarded to me. Donc, je répète, si vous avez une question, vous pouvez envoyer par courrier électronique à agm@ckc.ca et il nous fera plaisir de répondre à votre question. So the next question is from Lisa. Will CKC reconsider the value of virtual competition for rally and obedience to be recognized with a different title designation such as V, capital V?
Go ahead, Paul.
As chair of the Obedience Council, I can assure the member that's asking this question that it has been discussed several times at the council level, both last year and early this year. And at this point in time, there is no plans to go forward with it.
So that's what disappeared. Okay, you answered the question. No, it's back. Building on the previous question, value of virtual competition allows competition in remote areas, which allows reactive or timid dogs to compete. That would encourage more competitors. Anything to add?
Once again, we have discussed this at a couple of the Obedience Council meetings at great extent. And all I can say is if you're extremely concerned about it, bring it to the attention of your local obedience rep, and we will consider it at the next Obedience Council meeting for further discussion.
I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. I'd like to thank you guys for your hospitality. I'm an honorary Newfoundlander now, even though I said no last night because I didn't want to kiss the fish. Like, yeah, that thing stunk. Congratulations again to our 50-year members and to our National Chair Award winners. As we start to see a vision of what our new normal looks like, 2022 and beyond is sure to be very busy years for our canine community. I encourage all of our members to reach out to their local clubs to volunteer in some capacity. I also encourage you to introduce someone new to shows and trials in 2022. Many of our friends and family members welcomed new dogs into their families over the pandemic. Now's the perfect time to introduce them to dog sports and the canine communities that we are a part of to help them find new and fun ways to what to do with their four-legged family members. Together, we can use this opportunity to grow the sport that we all love. Let's move forward into our new normal together, promoting the sports and breeds that we love and the value they have to offer all Canadians. On the screen, you'll see the date and location for the next year's AGM. Next year's AGM. Nope, not there. Oh, there we go. Thank you for attending. Okay. Date, location for next year's AGM in beautiful Kelowna, BC. We hope to see you all there. Be on that dock. Before you leave, please take the time to complete our survey. Your feedback will give us direction on how to conduct future meetings. It can be found under the survey tab in the left-hand corner menu of the live stream platform. Once again, thank you for attending. I'll now entertain a vote on the following motion. It has been moved by Mark Rolski that the meeting be adjourned. All in favor? Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to ask Frank to speak for a moment here.
Again, we want to thank everybody from the Hospitality Club that we really appreciate you coming. We have to take a few minutes to get the room ready, but there is going to be a wine and cheese party. And we're going to have some prizes for some of you guys here. And hopefully Denis will sing his opera for you today. And hopefully you'll have a good time to mingle. If you don't mind just staying in this room or in the hallway just for a few minutes until we get everything ready. And we'll be, hopefully you can enjoy some wine and snacks. And again, thank you very much.
And if we are still live streaming this, this is an incentive for you to come join us in Kelowna next year.
Yeah, for the wine